The Shooting Range. In this episode, World War Season 3. Pages of alternative history, battle for the Fulda Gap, and metal beasts, an interesting modification of the American M60. Today we're talking about an unusual event tank that will soon become available to the participants of the third season of our World War mode. This is an in-depth overhaul of the American M60 that receives the BR 10.0 in the game. The AMBT in its name means Affordable Main Battle Tank. On the outside it looks like a classic M60, but inside, inside this vehicle is almost entirely renewed. The new engine gets to almost 1,200 horsepower. The transmission is also new, and the combination of the two gives us a maximum speed of 58 kph. The weapon of the tank is a 120mm gun with elevation angles from -10 to +20 degrees. The Commander Cupola houses a heavy-caliber machine gun added to a 25mm autocannon on the roof of the turret. The ammo is located inside the hull. The improved engine and transmission have significantly increased the vehicle's mobility, especially compared to the quite slow M60. It still can't compete with the fastest tanks, but it won't be lagging behind the rest of the team either, and will be able to reach important positions in time. The armor is almost the same. It'll rarely save you from a modern APF-SDS round, so your best friend on the battlefield is not your protection, but your 120mm weapon. The available ammo options are represented by a standard Heat FS round and the KEW APF-SDS projectile, which is an export version of the Abrams M829 round. Try to keep a safe distance from the enemy to take advantage of the gun and its great penetration rate, and at the same time, avoid pushing your luck. Don't forget about your thermal sight. It will help you find not only targets but also potential threats. This high profile is compensated to some extent by elevation angles. You just need to hide the hull, taking a position behind a hill or another obstacle. That would make the ammo inaccessible to enemy projectiles, since it's located in the hull and in the stands under the turret ring. And you, on the other hand, will be able to fire easily, risking only the gun breach and, worst case scenario, a couple of your crew members. What you shouldn't do, though, is rush into close combat. It's hard for a huge tank to find a suitable hideout in an urban environment, and the lack of modern composite armor doesn't help you survive either. It's better to destroy the enemy from a distance before they get any time to figure things out. Your gun and ammo options make it quite possible, and the execution is up to you. The Fulda Gap, one of the most dangerous places on the planet. A tiny patch of land that separates the uncompromising ideological opponents of the East and the West. According to the estimates of NATO leadership, this valley was most likely to be the place where the invasion could begin, both within the offensive and defensive doctrines of the USSR. As we know, in reality, both sides had enough common sense to avoid the tragedy. But if the circumstances would have been just a little different, the whole human history could have taken a completely different path. Let us remember the summer of 1985, the heat of the Cold War. The West is closely watching the changes in the Soviet Union leadership. A chain of economic and political events leads to ever-increasing tension. The situation is heated to the extreme. The forces of both military alliances are drawn to the very border, set on high alert, and are determined to act according to the approved directions. And now, imagine on one hot July morning, a scout accidentally flies into foreign airspace, or somebody's air defense shoots down an aircraft by mistake, even though it hasn't really violated anything, or a tank crew miscalculates something and drives into the neutral zone at full speed. Such incidents have occurred more than once, but with everyone on full alert, the price of a mistake is higher than ever. Someone gets nervous, first shots are fired, response fire is heard as well, and panic reports fly in both directions under the roar of guns. It's on! Pre-designed plans are automatically activated. Aviation is taking off. An avalanche of Soviet tanks is going on the offensive, covered by a moving barrage of airburst rounds. Chaff clouds are floating in the sky, while electronic warfare stations transmit broadband interference to completely block radio communications. Battles are fought in the thick smoke at short distances, and only those with lower profiles and faster gunners can prevail. Over the border towns, sirens are howling, and strike aircraft engines are roaring as they bomb the enemy's rear and headquarters. Anti-tank helicopters and Bundeswehr are almost blindly hunting Soviet tanks, getting caught by the firing Shilkas and Tunguskas. All the roads have turned to impassable rubble of burning Soviet and NATO vehicles. But then the last defensive lines are broken, and the latest modifications of the Soviet T-80 are rushing into the breach, covered with the Contact 1 reactive armor blocks. They act in strict accordance with the approved strategy of the Warsaw Treaty Organization to deprive America of bases and allies in Europe. In a couple of hours, the tanks will have reached Frankfurt, the first beachhead before they start deploying further, deep into West Germany, the UK, and France. The hands of the world leaders are reaching towards the red buttons, and the fate of humanity is literally hanging by a thread. Fortunately, none of this happened. Of course, in reality, the situation was tense, and there were some isolated incidents, but the global conflict was still avoided. However, in War Thunder, things are different. The third season of World War starts on July the 1st, and the Battle for the Fulda Gap scenario becomes available to all enthusiasts of modern vehicles. Wanna get involved? There are only a couple of days left before the start of the third season of World War. And if you're watching this episode after the premiere day, perhaps the battles on the global map have already begun. Anyway, it's the perfect time to let you know what awaits you there. Two main words: modern tech. Yes, for the first time in the history of World War, supersonic fighters and made battle tanks with composite armor will come into battle, with thermal sights and radar, modern ATGMs, and APF-SDS rounds. In short, all the most advanced weapons and technologies available in the game these days. We've developed two scenarios specifically for these battles. They are the aforementioned Battle for the Fulda Gap, a hypothetical but thankfully never happening conflict of the Cold War, as well as the Battle of the Chinese Farm, the largest tank battle in modern history and one of the key episodes of the Yom Kippur or October War. We'll tell you more about this one in the following episode of The Shooting Range. By the way, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss it. Back to the gameplay. The difficulty level has changed. Now the battles will be fought in a non-marker mode, familiar to a lot of you from mixed realistic battles. This applies to both ground and purely aviation modes. With modern technologies, a new military branch also enters the fray: helicopters. They have a special airfield on the map which can only accommodate rotorcraft. In addition to the most obvious role, which is supporting tanks on the battlefield, the new class can attack convoys and, keep this in mind, transport infantry armies by air. You've already seen similar mechanics in the previous seasons with ships that were transporting troops. But unlike them, helicopters have much less autonomy and can't stay in the air for long. At low fuel levels, they will land, leave the transported troops, and return to base. In battle, helicopter armies have their own slot, which means that commanders will be able to simultaneously send a couple of airborne armies to help ground forces, one consisting of aircraft as before, and the other consisting of rotorcraft. There will be helipads appearing in the battle, where you'll be able to repair the machine and replenish the ammo. However, the planes will still have to leave the battle through special areas. The interface has been changed as well. For instance, we've significantly simplified the search and joining operations. Instead of a long list, you'll see only either one active or being prepared scenario, and the buttons to join it. Also, for convenience, the name and the description of the missions now depend on the side you play for. For example, the defense mission will be called Advance to Contact for the offensive side. Finally, we introduced the cross-console multiplayer in World War. It is now available for Xbox owners as well. So, whatever platform you play on, consoles or PC, clear up your schedule, prepare your vehicles, and see you on the battlefield. The first message today was sent by a player called Sebastian Desuesido. How do you manage to get or create the sounds? Custom designing or recording of real tanks? It depends on different vehicles. We partner with tank museums all over the world, and sometimes manage to get some information from actual military units. Sound recording is actually one of the most spectacular parts of creating War Thunder, and we've accumulated some very cool archive videos over the years. Perhaps we'll compile them in a separate video someday. Alex Mapping HD writes, as an adding note to the pages of history, some Porsche Tigers were upgraded frontally and used by some tank commanders. That's correct. Not all those Porsche Tigers were repurposed into Ferdinands. Apart from them, they also created 3 Bergepanzer Ferdinand and 1 command and staff vehicle called Panzerbefehlswagen 6P. Quite a famous vehicle with numbers 003 on the turret. Then there's a question sent in by Lion Tank. When you leave a match before it ends, do you get all the points or only a part? The rewards are designated at the moment of the battle ending. The winning team gets better rewards than the losing one. But winning without one teammate is obviously harder. So try not to set your teammates up by leaving the battle if you still have unused vehicles. Slavic Pigeon wants to know, is it possible to play as kamikaze? Why though? If we're talking about real-life situations, then, of course, there were people sacrificing their lives to achieve their goals in what they believed. But the hardest part about that was making that decision while pointing your aircraft towards the enemy ship and letting inertia take the wheel isn't complicated at all. That doesn't sound like interesting gameplay, does it? Another question comes from driver Andrei. What Soviet World War II plane has the best climb rate? The main Soviet fighters by Yakovlev and by Lavochkin have more or less comparable climb rates, but their design features make it so that on altitudes below 3 kilometers, some will be climbing faster and the others higher. So instead of a clear winner, we'd recommend trying 2 of them, the LA-7 and the Yak-9UT. And the last question for today was written by HMMH. Will you improve the FPS in the new generation of consoles? We won't be revealing too much of our plans concerning the new generation of consoles just yet. But rest assured, when it comes to them, we'll do our best to use their hardware potential to its fullest. And now we've come to the end of The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment. New episodes premiere every Sunday at 1600 or 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Don't forget to subscribe. We did remind you earlier, if you recall. Click the bell and leave a like and tell us in the comments about your expectations of World War Season 3. See you in a week.